couldn't speak? What if I couldn't eat? What if I couldn't move? Would you still love me? What if my body ached and I always made you late? What if I couldn't wait? Would you still love me? Would you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? Would you still love me? What if I'm complicated, always leaving you frustrated? Nothing ever went quite right. Would you still love me? Wish I could let you know what the future holds. It's a promise I can't make. Through the good and bad, happy and sad, love's a risk that we must take. Would you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? Ooh, will you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? Oh, would you still love me?
If I could speak again, I'd ask you to remember when we first met and fell in love. We were so young and dumb, but our love was so strong. Memories of those late nights, so I feel this fight.
If I could speak again, I'd ask you to remember when we first met and fell in love. We were so young and dumb, but our love was so strong. Memories of those late nights, I would feel this fire. Would you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? 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 What if I couldn't speak? What if I couldn't eat? What if I couldn't move? Would you still love me? What if my body ached and I always made you late? What if I couldn't wait? Would you still love me? Would you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? Would you still love me? What if I'm complicated, always leaving you frustrated? Nothing ever went quite right. Would you still love me? Wish I could let you know what the future holds. It's a promise I can't make. Through the good and bad, happy and sad, love's the risk that we must take. Would you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? Will you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? Oh, would you still love me?
If I could speak again, I'd ask you to remember when we first met and fell in love. We were so young and dumb, but our love was so strong. Memories of those late nights, so I feel this fight.
If I could speak again, I'd ask you to remember when we first met and fell in love. We were so young and dumb, but our love was so strong. Memories of those late nights, I would feel this fire. Would you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? 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 What if I couldn't speak? What if I couldn't eat? What if I couldn't move? Would you still love me? What if my body ached and always made you late? What if I couldn't wait? Would you still love me? Would you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? Would you still love me? What if I'm complicated, always leaving you frustrated? Nothing ever went quite right. Would you still love me? Wish I could let you know what the future holds. It's a promise I can't make. Through the good and bad, happy and sad, love's the risk that we must take. Would you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? Will you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? Would you still love me?
If I could speak again, I'd ask you to remember when we first met and fell in love. so young and dumb, but our love was so strong. Memories of those late nights, so I fuel this fight.
If I could speak again, I'd ask you to remember when we first met, fell in love. We were so young and dumb, but our love was so strong. Memories of those late nights, I would feel this fire. Would you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? Would you still love me? Would you still love me? Would you still love me?
Hi everyone, welcome to our meeting today. So glad that you're able to come here early. This is a heavy topic and we like to keep time. We're grateful that you're able to come. Let's begin with our word of prayer. Lord Jesus, we are grateful for the opportunity to gather couples together and to talk about such an important topic as intimacy and sex. And Lord, we know that you created sex and marriage and formed us to, need it and desire it. We know so well, Lord, that intimacy can be so difficult and challenging in marriages. And you know how painful it can be, Lord, when we are deprived of it and how we are drawn to temptation when seeking to satisfy those desires. And Lord, we pray that we are gathered here asking that you help us, Lord, to understand intimacy better. Lord, open our eyes to see the desires and needs that we have neglected, Lord, in our spouses and the sins that, have left them wounded. We ask, oh God, that you give us the courage today to face our fears and obstacles that hinder our intimacy. Lord, help us to rebuild once again the oneness that you created us to have in marriage. We pray, oh God, that this meeting today will be the beginning of healing, the beginning of communication and conversation in this area of intimacy. And Lord, this will be the beginning of a journey, Lord, to loving, fiery, selfless, and gospel glorifying sex. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Great. Thank you again for everyone who has been able to come. It is our prayer and our hope that this will be enriching session for marriages and for couples going forward. And without wasting time, I'd like to welcome Reverend Harrison to introduce our session and to introduce the speaker of today. Karibu, Reverend Harrison.
Thank you so much, James, and welcome to everyone who has joined us for this very, very special meeting tonight that's been organized by our family's team. Such a wonderful blessing to see so many of us have come in because we want to delight in the gift that the marriage the Lord has given to us is. And I want to thank you, all of you, for wanting to come to labor, to work hard, to put in the effort towards making our marriages even better. And so thank you so much for coming in. Before I bring to us Robert Kip Chelasho, can I just open for us with the words of the Song of Solomon, chapter 2. I'm going to just read a few verses from verse 3, just to bring our minds to this very special evening. just again delighting in God, who has indeed in his word given us all the things that we need for our growth in the Lord and in the gospel, but also for all the other things that we need in this life, that he has made us for. The Song of Solomon, I'm reading chapter 2 from verse 3. As an apple tree among the trees of the forest, so is my beloved among the young men. With great delight I sat in his shadow, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. He brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. Sustain me with raisins, she says. Refresh me with apples, for I am sick with love. His left hand is under my head, and his right hand embraces me. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or the does of the field, that you not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. And then the bride says, the voice of my beloved, behold, he comes, leaping over the mountains, bounding over the hills. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Behold, there he stands behind our wall, gazing through the windows, looking through the lattice. My beloved speaks and says to me, arise, my love, my beautiful one, and come away. For behold, the winter is past. The rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth, and the time of singing has come. And the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. The fig tree ripens its figs, and the vines are in blossom. They give forth fragrance. Arise, my love, my beautiful one, and come away. O my dove, in the clefts of the rock, in the crannies of the cliff, let me see your face, let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet, and your face is lovely. Catch the foxes for us, the little foxes that spoil the vineyards, for our vineyards are in blossom. My beloved is mine, and I am his, she says. He grazes upon the lilies until the day breathes and the shadows flee. Turn, my beloved, be like a gazelle, a young stag in the cleft mountains. Certainly very, very deep poetic allegory there of what certainly appears like a deep love-making session. It's our great delight to welcome a very dear friend, Reverend Kip Chalasho, to speak to us really about this joy of Christian love. And Kip comes to us from Christ Church, Roresho, and he's an older brother, a man I deeply respect, and a pastor who has pastored for many years, and also now a church planter. And it's my great delight to welcome you, Kip, to speak to us this evening and to help us to engage this topic, and later on to take questions that have been raised from among us. Karibu sana, Reverend Kip.
Asante, thank you very much for that welcome, Harrison, Pastor Harrison. Very good, very, very glad to be here on an important topic, I think, as this. Because of time, I'm going to go straight into it. But first, let me check. Everyone can hear reasonably okay, yes? Good. Yeah, I've got a thumbs up. Great. So we're going to go straight to I'm going to use a PowerPoint presentation. So let's see whether I can get that going. So there's the poster you'll have seen, but it's going to get. I'm glad Harrison read a reading from Song of Songs with its clear allusion to sex, lovemaking, as we might call it. And I'm going to be as open. I'm going to try and be as open as I can. I think one of the challenges we face in our culture, in our context, is just the question of dealing with this issue honestly, in the way that the Bible does that. So there it is. Will you still make love to me? Sex in the different seasons. That's a subtitle I was given, thinking about the different seasons of life, the different moments in life, the different things we go through, and how that might affect our connection with our partner, our intimacy with our partner. I think someone has got their microphone in. But yeah, so there we go. That's what we're going to do. What we're going to cover: 3 things. I would like to be honest. As I've prepared, I realized that there's just quite a lot of stuff. This is what we'll try and cover. Okay, so we're going to try and cover. If we're really clocking past the hour mark, I'll stop where we'll stop, and maybe we can proceed another time. But what I'd love us to cover is sex in the Bible as a general concept. We always need, when we come to a discussion like this, to go back to the Bible, first and foremost. We don't want to just hear the thoughts of man. We don't want to go to psychology. We don't want to go to, what is the magazines out there saying true love or whatever. We want to start with the Word of God, because that should be our guide. Lamp for our feet, a light for our path. That should be the thing. And even on this, it is. Then 2, why do couples struggle? Why is it? Why such a fundamental issue becomes a difficult issue? And then some things to be aware of at a general level connected to the different seasons. I was asked specifically about things like pregnancy, sex in pregnancy. I was saying when people are busy, when they stress in the family, this kind of thing, right? So I'll try and touch on some of those. So my name is Kip Chalasho there, but that's my family. Rachel, married to the one and only lovely Rachel, and we've got 4 kids, starting from, I don't know whether we planned it this way, but 2 boys, 2 girls, and we start from the right going to the left. They're all in age order there. Firstborn, Elijah, then number 2, Ezra, then number 3, Susanna, then 4, Bethany. That was on our way to my to my parents in December. So Rachel and our 4 kids. So, bit of a joke. Given, I was asked, maybe because I've got 4 kids, maybe that means I know something about this subject. I don't know. But God has blessed us from this union with these lovely children, for which we truly thank God. And it's a pleasure to be able to, even with our own kids, we've begun, with the oldest boy at least, Elijah, began to think about some of these things, because the Bible talks about them. And I think I want to begin by talking a little. Well, there's the church I pastor. It's called Christ Church, with this motto: all of Christ for all of life. That's important. We don't want Christianity to be this thing that is just stuck in a corner. That just touches at the Sunday school and Bible study and prayer and visiting the sick. No, we want Christ to influence and touch all the corners of our life, including this issue. So take it in that vein. We're thinking how our discipleship, how our following of Christ, how our taking up of our cross and following him, it touches even an area such as this. Okay, Christianity and following Christ is not just for the spiritual things. It also includes the physical. Love the Lord your God with all your strength, the Bible says. And we want to think it in that light. All of Christ, we're thinking of now for all of life, Christ for every area. That's how we're going to go. Now, if I would have loved, I was saying to Pastor Harrison earlier, I would have loved to do this in person. Partly, I know it's a bit of we find this a difficult subject, and maybe having it online is easier to hide and not feel too embarrassed. But I would have loved to do this in person. So we're going to do a bit of work, just a little bit of work in a minute. But what I'd love, I don't know whether there's a feature on Google Meets for, direct messaging. So not to the whole group, but just to me. If you feel able, I would love you. I don't think you can make it anonymous, but if you can, I want to get a feel of where people are at in terms of the couples I'm speaking to, which is what I'd do if I was doing this. When I've done this kind of thing in person, I try and gauge what are the issues, how their marriages. So if you can, direct message, not to the whole group, how long you've been married. You could write 2 years, 5 years, 7 years. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, put the sex thing to one side for a minute, but on a scale to 1 to 10, where would you say your marriage is? Are you in the right bit? Are you in the middle? Are you 8, 9, 10 uko? Are you sort of 5, 6, 7? Or are you is your marriage at this season, is it in a valley, the valley of the shadow? So if you can, not to everybody, I would love to just get a sense. So direct message, if that feature is there, I'm not actually sure. How long you been married? On a scale of 1 to 10, uko happy? Are you in the really happy, things are great? In a general sense, I'm not talking now, but just general. Are you in the middle bit? Are you in the I'm not actually happy, right? So I've already been given some questions, and there are clearly people who are in the not very happy. Some sound like they're in the middle, but they'd like it to move to the happy. So where are you at as a couple? Now, first section I'd like us to do is sex in the Bible as a general concept. So here's what I'd love us to do. I am hoping that those who are on this call are married, all married. We'll be talking a lot about sex, and I don't think singles shouldn't hear about this, but because we want to talk about it and in practical terms and how to improve it, I think this kind of thing is best suited to couples, those who are married, specifically, not just couples in a general sense, but those who are married. So here's what I'd love us to do. I hope there are couples present and they're both here, husband and wife together. I would love you to do 2 things for me for maybe make it 3-4 minutes, please. Try and be as quick as you can. Here's what I'd love you to do. Can you think of any scriptures, not just one? I suspect you can think of at least one. Can you think of any? And we've just had one from Harrison, so don't give me Song of Songs chapter 2. Find another one. Okay, but can you think of any scriptures that speak to this subject? That's what I'd love you to do. Between you couples, husband, wife, just quickly, can you think of any? And then second question, as a bonus, you say, okay, I can think of, I don't know, whichever, Song of Songs, another chapter, and then good. But second, as a bonus, can you think of specific verses that connect with our theme, our specific theme today? Meaning that idea that sex is not just for those who are newly married and really in love, but it's there for the seasons. It should be there throughout life, really. It should be there when things are good, when there are challenges around, when there are stresses. It should be there as you go older. It's not just a thing limited to when those early days, honeymoon only. No. It's in line with our theme, sex for the seasons, loving someone through the seasons. Can you think of verses that might connect us specifically to that theme? I'd love you to do that. So if you can, please, I would love it if for 2-3 minutes, very quickly. Then we can't hear answers from everybody. Again, if I was doing this in person, we'd ask for a good number of interaction. But I'll ask 2 or 3 people if you feel, for 2 or 3 people to share. So can we please do that? Any scriptures on the general subject of sex? Where would you go? And then as a bonus, some specific verses on the seasons question. Let's do that for 2-3 minutes, Tafadhali. That'd be great. Okay, I'm going to continue. Very good. I've seen a good number of answers there, really helpful, and we'll touch on some of those. So actually, in the interest of time, I'm not going to ask for actual answers. You've already listed them. Genesis 2, very good. We have Hebrews 13. We have Proverbs 5. Bernard says, Muhimu sana, very important. Quite a few have written 1 Corinthians chapter 7. I suspect that would come up. I think most people know about that, the passage about each one belongs to the other, that kind of description. So all very good. Well done. Proverbs 5 has come up again. So that's good. Now let's go to my, here are my verses. I'm sure you could have more. Here are the verses I want to now work through fairly quickly. I hope I can go through them. Here's what I'm going to do. You can see the passage on the right, Genesis 2, 21, and so on, until 1 Corinthians 7. I haven't given the specific verses. You'll have to do a bit of homework when you later when you read, if you'd like to. But it's in that chapter there. Once or twice we might get an extra slide that shows the verse, but the focus will be that chapter, just you can note them. How does it speak of sex will be item number 1 we'll think of. Then does it say anything specifically about the season? And I think these verses or books, Ruth is a book, or Song of Solomon, do that. Okay, so the first one is Genesis chapter 2. How does it speak of sex? It does, in talking about this idea of oneness, the two becoming one flesh. Okay, unity that is achieved through the coming together of a husband and wife in the sexual act. Okay, let's look at the verse together. There's Genesis 2, 23 to 24, and Adam said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." The first time we hear Adam speaking proper, it is a poem of delight. He's happy. He's been with the animals and it's not quite been right. He sees the woman and he's like, this is delightful. He does this poem. It's probably a song. This is now bone of my bones, at last, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Okay, they shall become one flesh. That's a bit, how, if we were to, maybe not crudely, how does a couple become one flesh? It's not by, shaking hands. It's not by having the same family name. It's not, it is by the coming together in that physical act that unites them, binds them somehow to become one unit, one entity, as it were. In that sense. So a married couple achieves oneness, unity through sex. That's how Genesis 2, and especially those verses we just looked at, 23, 24, point us in that direction. Does it say anything about the seasons? I think it does, because the implication is we're to be united to our spouse for life. This is how Jesus will interpret it in the Gospels. Right? He says, when the divorce question comes up, no, you're to be together for life. You will become one flesh, and there's that sexual act, yes, but there's something about you being committed. The man has left his home, come and join the wife, and now they are one. Okay, and it's not one just for 2 years. It's not for a certain season, for life. That's the implication. And I think, therefore, then the first pointer to sex, Genesis chapter 2, has something to say about the seasons, that we are to be united, we are to be one flesh, as it were, one unit, as it were, not just for a small time, but ongoingly. Next one is Genesis 21. Sarah, the story of Sarah becoming pregnant. Interesting detail we're given, the ages of how old Sarah was, how old Isaac was. Sarah became pregnant, as you know, in her 90s. And so, weird as it may seem, when you read the literature, people, or at least when you go online, people find it odd that old people can have sex. They find it a bit weird. But yet the Bible doesn't hide that. We'll see another example later. But Sarah clearly, and Abraham, okay, they hear the promise of God, and they don't just sit there and say, the baby to come by magic. No, they did something. They followed through and thought, this is how God produces babies. They had sexual intercourse in her 90s. And so what does it say about the seasons? it says that sex can happen even among the very elderly. It's not just for, again, I think in the culture we live in, very sexualized culture, more so in the West, but it's come here as well. We tend to think it's just for the youth, for the young, okay? And the temptation, I think, here is to be drawn into the world way of thinking, I have to look young, I have to look like the youth all my life. No, not necessarily. Here we're seeing this couple who are clearly elderly and could not do anything to alter. There was no plastic surgery then. It had to be as they were. And it can happen. This gift that God gives can happen even among the very elderly. Next one, Genesis 24. Physical intimacy brought Isaac comfort. Very interesting description we're given in Isaac when Isaac meets Rebekah for the first time. The story is told in Genesis 24. Abraham sends a servant to look for a wife from his people, not from the people of Canaan where Abraham was living. He says, go and find a wife for my son from the place I came from our people, not from the people here. The servant is successful. He brings back Rebekah. The end of the chapter details what happened when they met. And here it is. I'll read it for us. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done, how God had led him, how he'd met Rebekah, how Rebekah had agreed to come. You remember the family at points almost look like they want to hold her back and keep her there. But Rebekah says, no, I want to go. I want to get married. Tells Isaac all these things. And Isaac, we're told, having had all that, and say, sour. I don't know how patient he was, but we're told, having had all that, 67, and Isaac brought her into his mother, Sarah's tent, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife. And he loved her. Okay, the Bible is interesting. It is not ashamed to talk about sex, but it also does it in a proper manner without it being too crude. Okay, and we get one of those descriptions here. He loved her, and you're meant to read from that. They had intercourse, and Isaac. What as a result? Isaac was comforted. That union, Isaac was comforted after his mother's death, and you can see them there. That's how an artist has chosen to render that. Isaac holding Rebekah's hand there, and Rebekah really was a blessing to him in that way. So physical intimacy brought Isaac comfort. That's how that reading speaks of sex. Does it say anything about the seasons? Yes, it does. Isaac, we're told, was in his 40s. He just turned 40. Actually, he was not in his 40s. He just turned 40 when he marries Rebekah. But I think the connection to the seasons is the Bible is not ashamed to say that having this relationship, having this union, and the sex act in particular, brought him comfort. And there is something then about sex that in terms of seasons is actually a blessing in times of significant trauma. He was grieving, he was in loss, sadness had happened in the family, and the gift of marriage, and especially the gift of sex, having Rebekah there, will comfort him. Okay, look again at the reading. And Isaac we're told he loved her, and he was comforted, right, by having Rebekah there, and specifically that gift of sexual union. So yeah, it says that sex can be a real blessing in times when there's stress in the family or trauma, especially outside of us, things we couldn't control. This can be a way we give each other comfort. Next one, Genesis 26. Very interesting reading again. Notice with you that a lot of these examples are in Genesis. I actually think Genesis is one of the books that Christians ought to know and know well. Foundational book, and we find a lot that then feeds into areas of life there. And it's not surprise that marriage is mentioned there first, but a lot of these examples are from Genesis, first book of the Bible. Genesis 26 is an interesting one because we're back to Isaac and Rebekah. We're not going to turn to the reading just now, but I'd love you to go and read it later. We're told that Isaac and Rebekah were caressing each other, or holding each other, and the manner in which they were doing that made the king of Gerar, look and say, these two are married. They deceived him and said, we're brother and sister. And we're told he looked up from a window and saw them somewhere, and he looked and he saw the way they were holding each other, perhaps looking at each other, and said, Apana, these are not brother and sister. These two must be married. Right, the physical expression they had towards each other, whatever that is, some versions say caressing, holding, this kind of language. That's the versions used. And I find it interesting. I went on Google Images and searched for this story. How is it presented? Here are the different ways through the ages, through history. Some of these paintings are old, that this story is pictured, right? The clearest one is that one which is from the, I think in the 1800s. The one on the right, there's a king looking down. Is like, he looks angry because he's been deceived, like Abraham deceived Pharaoh. But Isaac and Rebecca. Oh yeah, there's another translation, frolicking. The top left one. There's a way they were holding each other, maybe looking at each other, maybe how close they were to each other. We're not exactly told. The picture at the bottom left, that's from the 1600s, I think. Unashamed, like there's Isaac holding Rebecca's breast, and the king looks and sees, Apana, these guys are clearly a couple. And the story, he rebukes Isaac, why do you deceive me? Someone could have slept with your wife, and so on and so forth. But I think it's interesting. There's a sense in which among two, so long as they're married, is a key point. They're married, that they can express this kind of intimacy, closeness, expression with each other, and doing it in the way that when a guy looked and maybe he shouldn't, they're like, well, I can tell they're a couple, right? So say anything about the seasons? Yes, it does. Isaac, at this point in the story, is somewhere between 40 and 60. People say probably closer to 60. We're not exactly sure. He's somewhere in that range. And I would say then, does it say anything about the seasons? Yes. Sex is not just a thing for the youth. Okay, again, that's how we tend to think about it. But and notice he's been married for that long, and if I can put it this way, the fire has not gone out of the relationship. That he's doing it, and he's doing it in a way that a king can do that. So I think it does tell us that it's not just a thing for those first few weeks, first few months, first day of marriage. No. A few years later, it should be part of the dynamic. Genesis 29, another example. How does it speak of sex? We're told this is a chapter where Jacob goes to his father, uncle, to Laban's prop place. He then is deceived and marries Leah first, then marries Rachel. I think this chapter is interesting to connect to this subject because we're told once Leah starts conceiving, there's like this sequence of just conceiving. It's continuous, right? And obviously the conception tells us clearly that there was sexual intercourse, clearly. Let me read it for us and just notice, I'll highlight in a minute. This is the actual bit now where Leah gets her first 4 children. Genesis 29, verse 31 to 35. When the Lord saw that Leah was hated, meaning she was not as appreciated as Rachel, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And Leah conceived and bore a son. She called his name Reuben, for she said, because the Lord has looked upon my affliction, for now my husband will love me. Here's a bit. She conceived again. And in the way the language is put, it's almost like it wasn't that long. And commentators tell us the children are born almost, year next year. One Reuben is born like now, then the next one comes soon after. So clearly, having children is not a limitation on having sex. That's the point. Okay, she conceived again, not long after having one, and born the other, and bore a son, and said, because the Lord has heard that I am hated, he has given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. Notice verse 34. Again, she conceived. So, you've had child number 1. That doesn't stop that couple interacting in that way, the sexual union. Having had child number 2, that doesn't stop it either. Again, she conceived and bore a son and said, now, this time, my husband will be attached to me because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore, his name was called Levi. And she conceived again. It doesn't stop it. And bore a son and said, this time I will praise the Lord. Therefore, she called his name Judah. Then she ceased bearing. I want to answer one question directly that was asked. That was one of the ones listed in the question list that I'd been sent earlier. Someone asked in the anonymous list of questions, is there such a thing as good sex after children? Is there such a thing? as good sex after kids? And I would say the answer is yes, of course. I think clearly. Okay, we see that with the pattern that, like I've just said, they don't stop. It's not an end to their engagement in that way. But I think more effort, planning and thought needs to go into it, clearly. Okay, with children come tiredness. Perhaps if, I don't know what it was like in ancient Israel, but perhaps you're living in a place where people are all close to each other. So yes, there has to be more effort, more thinking, more planning, more arranging. But does the Bible seem to imply that once kids come, that stops? Not at all. Okay. I would say as well, directly in terms of helping couples, after children turn 1 year, do not encourage them to sleep with you, as this picture shows, or to sleep in your room. I would say that I think this is I know of families that do it, and I know of a family where the kids are 4 or 5 and they're still staying in the room. I think that is for the couple, that is very unhealthy. I think very unhealthy, unwise, not a good way to nurture that bond that should exist between a husband and a wife. So I would say, yeah, when they're under 1, they're still vulnerable. You need to listen carefully. You don't want them, as they're beginning to get into good sleeping, you want to catch them before they cry too loudly or too long, then they'll take a while to sleep. Fine. But I reckon after they turn 1 year, mom and dad should be working very hard to encourage them to sleep by themselves, right? So after children turn a year, don't encourage them. I don't think it's a good thing. And I want to challenge the mums in particular in this conversation. I word to you wives, mums, okay? Never put the children ahead of your husband. I think it tends to be the mums that encourage, in the main, I'm not saying always, but I think it tends to be the mums who encourage this pattern. Because it's easy. When she wakes up, certainly if they're breastfeeding, it's easier, less having to get out of bed. But I want to encourage wives in particular, never put the children ahead of your husband. As in, it's fine. If they're sick, if they're going through a season where they're quite vulnerable, okay, for a time. But be clear about it and say, once this is settled, don't make it a habit. Don't put the children ahead of your husband. What that happens, if you cultivate this kind of thing, and you're with sleeping with your children, what happens? Let me tell you what happens. If it becomes a really established thing, you get to the point where the focus between you and your husband, the connection is really lost, right? And by the time they're getting older, it's like, oh, if you just forward that story ahead, by the time they're like in their teens and they have to get onto their own things, you discover you guys have got, where's the bond, right? It's kind of gone. It's not there anymore. It's not that strong anymore. Secondly, and more, it's hidden, but it's quite, I think, potentially quite dangerous or unhelpful is that, remember that how you live as husband and wife is communicating something to your children. It is always communicating something to your kids. And one of the dangers this kind of thing does is eventually it then communicates to the kids that they're actually more important. That's why I use that phrase, more important than the husband or the wife, when that's the focus, right? That's what it begins to communicate, kind of self-entitled. It's all about me, as opposed to, wow, mom and dad really are there for each other. They care for us. Yes, they love us, but their relationship is precious and valued, and they see and know that. So I would say, this is an area I want to challenge us on, not to cultivate too much. So Leah conceived soon after giving birth. You see that sequence of, and she conceived, not long after giving birth. So does it say anything about the seasons? Yes, it says that having children does not mean the end of sex, as some people think. As some people, well, I think now we've had the kids. No, your marriage is more than your children. Fundamentally, it should start with you, husband and wife, first. Genesis 30, very interesting description here. We're not going to turn to it, but I encourage you to read. This is one of the most unusual chapters in the Bible, but Leah openly says to Jacob, right? There's kind of tension in the family of Leah and Jacob, but Leah openly says to Jacob that he must sleep with her that night. He comes home from somewhere and there's a bit of a discussion with her and Rachel and says, no, today you're coming to stay with me. And I think it speaks of this idea that a wife can initiate. A wife can ask. It's not beyond the realm. It's not wrong, in other words, because it's there in the text. She asks him. And this Does it say anything about the seasons? Yes, it does. The request that Leah gives comes after child number 4. So again, linking it to the kids question, having many children does not mean the end of sex either, right? First, it tells us, yes, you can ask for it. The wife can. That's not beyond the realms of possibility. It's not even wrong. And many kids does not stop that either. Next one, Genesis 35. And then it's Genesis 35 first when Joseph is born. Then Genesis 37:3, we're told specifically, now Israel, here's a verse, loved Joseph more than all his sons. Why did he love him more than all his sons? The verse continues, because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a coat of many colors. Joseph is, we know he's the most loved, and he's given this robe, I think is a better translation, not just coat, a robe that signifies power or authority or a special role. He gave him this. And why was he loved? Because he was a son of his old age. Commentators tell us that Jacob at this point is he's over 90, okay? Over 90 and closer to 100 at the point of Benjamin's birth. Joseph's birth, sorry, I've actually written the wrong thing there. So clearly, again, we're back to the point earlier, it's not just about when you're young, right? These patriarchs show us the way. Like, it's not just about, oh, you have to be sprightly, it has to be on that honeymoon trip. No. Jacob has kids late into his life, meaning clearly there was that sexual act coming together, being one flesh even later into life. Ruth, how does the book of Ruth speak about sex? That first column, it does, in that there are hints even when Ruth first meets Boaz properly that night in the kind of at the party after the harvest, but even more clearly, more explicitly, it does in that Ruth got pregnant from Boaz. Okay, that's, you become pregnant, you know that the sexual act has happened. One flesh has happened. Does it say anything about the seasons? Yes, it does. We tend to think Boaz was a young man. Okay, this is a problem with just reading the Bible and perhaps some of the Sunday school pictures we have. When you track, and you can do this by looking at the lists in the other books, Chronicles and so on, and tally what's going on in terms of ages and people around him. When we do the math, Boaz was in his 80s when he married Ruth. He's not a young man, in other words, right? So does it say anything about the seasons? Again, like a few we've seen before, yes, because Boaz was in his 80s when he married Ruth. Next one, Song of Solomon, the book itself. Yes. Does it speak of sex? Yes. We have the first reading to open the meeting from Pastor Harrison. It does, through its descriptions and language, very intimate. Very open, talking about kissing. It talks about breasts. It talks about holding. It talks about desires. It talks about closing off a room that people are not present. It talks about perfumes and smells, right? It doesn't hide it. It's so unashamed. It doesn't do it crudely and crass in a kind of horrible manner, but you read it and you know this is talking about a husband and a wife and the joy they have for each other. Does it say anything about the seasons? Yes, it does. In this way, that a couple, both the man and woman, should delight in each other. You know the pattern in Song of Solomon? The man speaks, the woman speaks. The friends sometimes respond. Man speaks, the woman speaks, the friends might sometimes respond. It's not just the woman talking about how handsome or godly or caring or whatever the husband is, the man as well. It runs both ways, man to wife, wife to husband, delighting in each other, right? So it says something about the seasons in that it's not just, okay, normally what happens is this, the man does all he can to win the lady. Akishaweka pete mkononi, when he's got the ring, most men, if we're honest, they kind of let go, right? They kind of let go, behave kind of crudely, not as impressive and trying to be before. But here we see a pattern where both are desiring the best for each other, wanting to please each other, wanting to impress each other, Okay, and that's telling us something about the season. It's not just about one, but both delighting in each other. Okay, we're about to finish the list, and then we will go to something else. Proverbs 5. How does Proverbs 5 speak about sex? Through, again, its descriptions and language, a bit similar to Song of Solomon. Look at this. You know the verse. I think most of you do. Again, you read these kind of things and it might make you a bit embarrassed, but it's in the Bible. It's not like a magazine. This is the word of God. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. A loving doe, a graceful deer, may her breasts satisfy you always. May you ever be captivated by her love. Unashamed to talk about this kind of language and talking about the delight that comes when a couple are really close and enjoying each other bodily. It doesn't hide that. And notice as well, this is being addressed particularly to the man, right? It doesn't talk too much about the woman. It says how the man should view his wife. May her breast satisfy you. May you ever be captivated by her love, right? So, does it say anything about the seasons? Yes, that a couple, and particularly the man, should delight in his wife all the days of the marriage. Let's go back to the verse. May you ever, not just for a time, may you ever be captivated by her love. May her breast satisfy you always. Okay, there's this idea of it's not just a one-off thing, it's not just the early days, but you should delight in, the man especially is being called here to delight in his wife all the days of the marriage. Luke chapter 1, now we need to just rush through this one. Very interesting, read it later. Like Sarah, very much like Sarah, she's a type of Sarah, Elizabeth became pregnant miraculously in her old age. Okay, she's past childbearing, but she gets pregnant. But she's clearly elderly, we're told that. So again, it speaks to the issue of sex not being limited to the youth. Read that later, Luke chapter 1. Is it from in 14:15 is when Luke 1, 14:15, the angel announces that they'll have a child to Zechariah. Then Zechariah doesn't believe it. He doesn't believe the angel's response, but clearly he went home and said, okay, let's have sex, because then they do get pregnant. And then lastly, 1 Corinthians chapter 7. How does it speak of sex? Through its descriptions and language, right? Does it say anything about the seasons? Yes, it does, because age or season is not, the Bible gives limitations for when you should not have sex in 1 Corinthians 7. But age or season, or we're going through a tough season, or we're too busy, is not the condition, right? It doesn't say limit yourself when you get to your 50s, or in the season is like this. No, age and season is not the limitation. Rather, it is a mutual agreement. You have to both agree. Not the husband can't just say, I've had enough, I don't want it, or the wife. It is mutual agreement, and it is for a time, a limited time for prayer. Okay, you want to commit yourself to something. Maybe you're about to buy a piece of land, or you think about moving house, or should we have another child? Maybe that you could set aside a few days maybe to pray and say, we need to commit. Is this the right thing? But the issue is not age necessarily, or life is so busy. No, it's more about agreeing mutually, both of you, for a time for prayer. That's a limitation. So in other words, it's telling us seasons and busyness are not the condition. Sex should be part of life for the couple through the years. Right. I want to just give. I want to just come to some conclusions on that section. But before I do that, can I ask: are there any quick questions? Just on that. Any clarifications on the scriptures, or all clear? All happy on that? All good. All right. So let's move on. So I've got three rough points on what we learned then from this section. Once we look at all those verses together, what are the big ideas, main themes we learn from those verses? How can we wrap up all of that? Number one, sex is a good gift from God. It's not from the world. It's not from social media. It's not from billboard advertising. It is from God to be enjoyed together by husbands and wives throughout their married life. There is no limitation on when it stops. We've got Abraham, we've got Sarah, we've got Boaz, and so on and so forth, to be enjoyed throughout your married life. And if you've got to the season stage in life where you're thinking, oh no, I think we've not had it for a while, or we stopped, unless you're going to tell me for prayer, then fine. But it should be a thing that is happening throughout, okay, throughout their married life. This is, I was going to ask it, but perhaps in the interest of time, this is the African bishop. He was from Africa, North Africa, Augustine, Saint Augustine of Hippo in North Africa, holding a Bible that says in Latin, tolle lege, which means take and read, which is how he got converted. He had someone saying that, he read it. Augustine, African bishop, basically gives us the wrong view of sex, right? Roman Catholic view in one sense of sex. Augustine said, nothing is so much to be shunned, especially apparently if you want to be devoted, as sex relations. I think that is completely wrong. That is completely wrong. The Roman Catholic view, of which Augustine kind of captures in one sense, is that essentially, if you push it to its hardest, sex is there for children, for procreation, which is true. That is one of its uses. But where they go wrong, or where Augustine goes wrong, is that is one, that is not the only use of it. Okay, so this idea that they say it's not necessary, and if you really want to be devoted, and you see this with this idea that cardinals and bishops and priests should not get married, I think that is very wrong. Okay, I think that is very wrong. Sex, one of the gifts it's there for is pleasure and comfort and delight in each other. Children, yes, but that is not the only thing. So sex is a good gift from God to be enjoyed together by husband and wife throughout their married life. We shouldn't be like Augustine. But I've underlined in this one, I've also underlined it should be enjoyed together. And I want to give a warning at this point. Be very careful, and maybe I should direct this at husbands. Be very careful at enjoying sex as a gift on your own. What do I mean by this? Do not use or even encourage, as I've heard apparently people sometimes doing, things like pornography to stimulate your marriage. That is wrong. Okay, that is a sin. Right? Do not use other external things. We never get this kind of motivation or driver in scriptures to kind of fire up your sex life. That is wrong. Back to this thing. It is a good gift from God to be enjoyed together, the two of you, exploring each other, loving each other, talking with each other. So I think pornography should not feature and getting stimulation from other sources, apparently to feed your married life. I think that is wrong. If you've had me teaching on this subject, this is a quote I like to use quite a bit. Sex is like fire. In the fireplace, it keeps us warm. It keeps the house warm. Outside the fireplace, it burns down the house. Sex is a great gift. It's a beautiful gift from God. All gifts from God are good. If you have a house where you have a fireplace, when it's put in there, it's lovely. You see the fire burning, the smell, the noise, the light, gorgeous, beautiful. If, however, you take it out of its kind of controlled zone and you're a bit reckless, you will burn the house down. It will bring destruction and pain and agony. Okay, so we need to keep it in its confines. And in the Bible, you never get stimulation from outside. It's always within the confines of marriage. That's where you find delight and delight in each other. So I would say external things like this should really be shunned. And I think women perhaps struggle as well, but men mostly. My other warning comes from the book of Revelation. Unfortunate to have to put it like this, but there is a sense in which Revelation tells us the who's who. Who are the guys who end up in hell? Obviously, it's unbelievers, those who don't believe in Christ. But Revelation drills that further. What does unbelief look like? And he said to me, verse 6, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give of the fountain of the water of life freely to him who thirsts. He who overcomes will inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son." If you believe, that's your portion. However, the contrast, hell. But the cowardly, the unbelieving, the abominable, the murderers, the sexually immoral, and I would put pornography in this, and entertaining it, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Sexual immorality is a serious issue. Sex is a good gift, but outside the fireplace, it is a serious issue. It'll lead you to hell. So we need to repent of it if that is something we have contemplated or indulged in. So that's point one, good gift from God, enjoyed together, husband and wife together, by husbands and wives throughout their married life. Point two, sex is spoken of a lot in the Bible, and so Bible-believing Christians should speak about it a lot, especially couples. It's spoken about a lot in the Bible. I've not even, as part of my preparation for today, I tried to run through the books of the Bible, and I got to Ecclesiastes. I went to Genesis. I was just trying to track, but there's a mention of sex until Ecclesiastes, at least in all those books, there's something, right? There's something in the Psalms, in the Proverbs, in Song of Songs, obviously, whole book, 1 Kings, 2 Kings, Joshua, everywhere, Numbers, Exodus, Genesis, it's all over. Okay, it's spoken a lot in the Bible, and so Bible-believing Christians should speak about it a lot, especially couples. It should not be a thing you've not ever spoken about as a couple, right? For most Christians, the mention of sex makes people go, well, they want to run away. I make it a point. I hope this doesn't surprise many of you. I make it a point, I think, here at church. It will be mentioned in some sense, either in one of the readings, or actually I'll mention sex or some kind of issue. So reading, what does faithful sex look like? I will mention it in the preaching here. I reckon probably every once a month at least, because it's a big issue. It ought to feature, right? For most Christians, the mention of sex makes them a bit, but that's wrong. Okay, here's another quote I love. I love this quote. We should not be ashamed, meaning we Christians should not be ashamed to discuss what God was not ashamed to create. If sex was our creation, fine. It's fine. You maybe we should be ashamed because it would not be right. But thankfully, it isn't us. So we should not be ashamed to discuss what God was not ashamed to create. He's the one who gave it. Delight in it. Speak about it. Especially as couples. I'm always surprised, when have you ever even spoken about it, and they're like, not really. Oh, where do you begin? Well, you need to. My challenge to people like Chungaji Harrison and the rest of us elders, pastors, I can see there are a few on the call. If this is all the church or Christians teach about sex, even maybe to our kids, no sex until marriage. If this is all we teach, then we have badly, badly failed. The church has failed. If this is the only thing we can say, as opposed to how delightful it is, how we're to enjoy it, how it is to be for all of life, how the wife can initiate, then if this is all we teach, we say we're Bible-believing Christians, as many of us say, then we have failed. We have failed. Another warning I want to give, don't give in to the lie of African customs and traditions, which is this is what our leaders have tended to go, especially whenever issues linked to sexuality. Recently, homosexuality has come up. Uhuru did it when Obama came. Recently, with the ruling from the Supreme Court, whenever the issues of sexuality comes up, what do our leaders say? They say, as Africans, we have our own customs and traditions. I think that is a terrible answer for a Christian to give. Right? Don't go for African customs. Okay, where will you stop if you go down that route? You'll end up with polygamy or something else. Okay, don't go down that route. We want to be Bible-believing people. We want to be Bible-centered people. We want to be Scripture-driven people, not African customs. Don't say, "Oh, that is wrong because," or we shouldn't. How this connects to sex is Africans have been trained to think that is not a thing we Africans talk about. Oh, that's not for us. Okay, that is not a biblical way to think. Think biblically. The Bible talks about it a lot. We should inhabit that space and not be, as we hear leaders, our customs. Customs, I'm not saying customs right, but on this one, I say customs kitugani. I don't want to do that. Go the Bible way. So sex is spoken of a lot in the Bible, and so Bible-believing Christians should speak about it a lot, especially couples. And there's that quote, we should not be ashamed to discuss what God was not ashamed to create. Of course, one warning. You might remember this lady, lady. Of course, this is not saying that we should be crass. Okay, so I'm not saying the danger of saying we should speak about it a lot is then you can end up being crude and having bad jokes and just talking about it inappropriately. The Bible speaks about it, but it does it appropriately, using languages, sometimes very coded language. Delight in Proverbs speaks about this language of the fountain, your fountain, which is actually a language of sexual intercourse. Love, he loved her, Isaac to Rebecca. Again, talking about the one flesh, or they were one flesh. That's it. Being united with, laying with. So it does it, but not in a crass way. Because I want us to be careful. I don't want people to start using crude language or not respecting context. If suddenly maybe there are too many, very little children or whatever, let's not go the crude and crass way as well. We should speak about it, but not carelessly or recklessly. I would say try and read how the Bible talks about it and try and track with that. Broadly, point number 3 from this section, as with all areas of family life, husbands, okay, very important, husbands should take a lead in this area. I'm not saying that wives can't take a lead or can't say anything, but as with all areas, husband is a leader, they should take a lead in this area. They should be the ones who are setting the tone, as it were. Specifically, I've got 3 examples. They should start the conversation. One of the challenges I want to give you husbands here today, if you've not had a chat about this issue, pray for strength and then find a way to begin to talk about it. You should start it. And start doesn't mean, you hear a message like this, maybe you talk about it in the next few weeks, alafu na watch it for the rest of your life. No, you start it, not just once. It ought to be a thing that comes up every so often. A new season comes up. Talk about it. Something changes. Talk about it. Okay. Start the conversation. One of the things it means to be a leader is, and husbands are told this, love your wives like Christ loved the church, laying down his life for her. This is one area you lay down your life. It's awkward, perhaps. It's, where shall I begin? Will she laugh at what I say? Will she say, watch her, stop that. We should really talk about that. So, but you have to lay down your life. That's what it means to be a leader. Sacrifice for the other. So husbands, start the conversation, and not just once. Number 2, husbands, again, take a lead in delighting in the wife, including in public. This is something I've been trying to work on myself with in the family times. Like, take a lead in delighting in your wife, speaking lovely things about her in public. Okay, don't go over the top, but when you come, notice, but you come and your wife has new hairstyle or done something, notice it. Hey children, I usually say, hey children, doesn't your mommy look lovely today? Okay, these kind of things. Even your mom, doesn't she look great today? And look at her and smile with her. Take a lead in delighting in your wife, including in public. Start there. Okay, Isikwe, your wife only hears maybe even sweet things, nice things before sex, late at night. That's it, and briefly, and then it poters. Make it a way of life. You husbands, take a light in delighting in your wife, including in public. Number 3. This is linked with number 1. Check with your wife how she is enjoying it. Okay, part of the conversation is like, how is it? I recently noticed this, but check, is she actually enjoying it? Why not? You have to take a lead and be prepared. Obviously, taking this route means being prepared for perhaps difficult questions or, I've not really enjoyed or whatever. But you husbands, part of leading like Christ, laying down your life, sacrificing for another. Obviously, I'm not saying you sacrifice. We husbands sacrifice exactly like Christ. That's not possible. But we should imitate that laying down, giving up for another. Check how she's enjoying it. So, sex during the honeymoon. And here are some questions I was asked. Very specific situation. Someone asked, how should it be in the honeymoon? Who should take the responsibility to initiate and talk about it? The man should take the lead. Right? The man should take the lead. And actually, I want to encourage couples. Okay, most of us probably married for a while. But if you're counseling someone, this would be a really good time in the honeymoon for couples to talk about, what their expectations are. What should it look like? Okay. And again, that's never a fixed thing. You should be able to talking about it. But my general rule for couples is when either of the couple wants it, both must want it. That's my general rule. When either wants it, and I take that from 1 Corinthians 7. your body, it's not about you now, it's about the other. When either wants it, both must want it, should want it, right? Because that's the way the Bible puts it. It's not like, oh, wait until everything is set. No, when either wants, both must want. So sex during honeymoon. Another question I was asked, sex when your wife is pregnant. Someone asked about that. Is that, what do you advise, Pastor? I think most people who've written on this, who've researched on this, say it is not something that you should discount. It actually happens, and it happens, and it can be a lovely thing. So don't rule it out. And again, who should talk about it? The man should take the lead. Unfortunately, Rachel is not here with us today. She was going to join, but our last born, Bethany, has just had to go to hospital. She's got asthma and got it really badly. So this evening was really coughing, and her temperature had gone up. So she's gone to my wife has taken Bethany to hospital at about 7:30. But I remember when Rachel was pregnant, this is an issue that came up. I don't know if it's an African thing in me. I must be honest. It was me who had the issue. I thought, okay, she's conceived, now she's pregnant. No sex until baby is born. But I remember Rachel saying to me, hey, what's happened? It's like, and it was interesting how she viewed it. Rachel viewed it that I was not loving her. I was not concerned about her because her body was changing. That's how she read it. She read it that I was not holding her hand. I was not kind of expressing delight in her because her body was changing. In my mind, I was like, oh, she's pregnant. Maybe you shouldn't. But she's like, hey, so we had to have a talk about it, and hey, yes, I'll leave it there for now. But that's the thing. I think couples should, and the person to take the lead is the man. Can I just recommend a book? And it's written by a Christian, very good book. This is probably the only book. So you can find it on Amazon, I think, and it has a very helpful chapter on things like this question on when your wife is pregnant. It's called, I don't know, you can see it. Is it visible? There it is. Intended for pleasure. Okay. So I would, if there's one recommendation of a book to read, I would actually get this book, right? Intended for pleasure. Get this book if you can. All right. Next, what are trying new things in sex? Because I think couples should think about that. Okay, it should not. There should be aspects of, hey, that again, that's something that is not, Christians find that awkward to think about. But when you read Song of Songs, it is clear they are both delighting. We talk about lips, we talk about holding, we talk about the hand under her neck. It's clear that they delight in each other's bodies. So trying new things, it should not be a thing that is outside the consideration. Again, the man should take the lead. But I would add a warning here. In fact, I'll give a warning with all these. Be careful, because sometimes in our culture, the man must take a lead equals whatever the man says must happen. I don't think that's right. The man must take a lead means he should at least present it and express why and discuss it. Taking a lead does not mean it has to happen, right? I'm not saying that. But the man should take the lead. She'd be like, hey, darling, I was thinking, and ... And if she, she says, oh, no, I'm not, oh, okay, why? And maybe let's talk about another time. Fine. But he should take a lead. It shouldn't be the wife saying, hey, what? Yeah, the man should take the lead. But be careful. That doesn't mean taking a lead equals whatever he says. Okay. Because I think this is an area, if we had time, and if we were together, or we could talk a bit more properly, people can end up doing things that are actually unhealthy, ungodly, perhaps, in the trying new things. But the man should at least take a lead. Sex when life gets busy, you know the answer by now. The man should take the lead. And I want to add here, because this question came up quite a bit about Pastor, what do you recommend when life gets busy? I would say this. Okay, nobody is too busy in life. I would say that actually, even despite having lots of responsibility, nobody's too busy. It's just a matter of priorities, right? Nobody's too busy in this life. If we Kenyans, we like investing in things. You get a bit of money, makadino kaploti or whatever. Okay, when people want something, they will give time to it, right? No matter what else is going on. Someone has said, if I want to know what is priority to you, look at your diary. What do you commit to? Look at where you put your money, right? Where is this guy? What has he scheduled? If I look at what you've scheduled in your diary, what gets done, and where you put your money, I know what your priorities are. Okay, and when things are really hot, no matter how busy life is, people prioritize that which is important. So yes, life, we go through seasons. Okay. And to be honest, busyness is just a matter of understanding, because you get married, you'll have to learn each other. You have to move house because a kid has been born. You have to, you're that one of you gets a promotion, life changes. Children are born, life changes. Parents get elderly and sick, life changes. So life is always busy, but now you have to prioritize. Is this something you have come to realize is key to the marriage? You will prioritize it. Men, I want to give you a challenge. I want to give the men in this call a challenge. Be very careful. Don't be the kind of man who knows everything going on in the world. Okay? Most men, like even men here at church, you talk to them, they can tell you all the names of the players of their football team. What? Back at the subs. They know them. And they know when this guy scored last, how many goals, when was the last time they won the match against this team. Okay, what's happening in politics? They'll tell you, hey, this is what's going on with Raila. I can give you a theory why this is happening, but they don't know about their wife. Okay, so be very careful, man. Don't be this kind of man who is always glued to the phone, doesn't know what's going on with the kid, with the wife, who is, you come home, when I got TV on, you get some of work on, you're on the phone next to you, PC, you're just like in that space, right? Men do not be this kind of man. Now, listen carefully. I'm not saying hang out with the men, with your with your male friends, with the guys those guys from school, that group of friends. I'm not saying don't know what's going on in politics or enjoy your football team. Sour, right? That's all good, but not at the expense of knowing your wife, right? We give time to what we value, and don't give more time to these things than the relationship with your wife. I said earlier, we want to not be crass, not to be crude, not to speak in a way that doesn't honor the Lord. And I would say this, men especially, I would encourage you to read Song of Solomon at least once a year, okay? To then kind of get the way, because it's Song of Solomon written by a man, a king, okay, a powerful ruler. And I think it's insightful. Here's a man talking about his wife, and wow, well, how does he describe it? Right, so look at that. Look at chapter 1 there, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's, chapter 1. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine. Right, read it to just get I try to read Song of Solomon's regularly, and then when I'm writing Rachel like a thank you note or some letter or something, I try and think, what can I try and find a way to either use a phrase from here or a description from here in describing Rachel, my wife. Okay, so it'll inspire you. It'll give you ideas. It'll give you a way in which you can think about this issue without it becoming crass or crude. Okay, it's basically having the Word of God, the mind of God, to impact and shape how we think about this very personal and deep subject. Let the Word be your guide in this area. So I'd encourage you, men especially, read it for yourself. Maybe when you think about your wife, describing how writing a note. You're altogether beautiful, my love. It says that middle one. There is no flaw in you. Wow, what a way to talk about your beloved, and so on and so forth. Read it, reflect on it. If you want, one of the ways as you think about talking about this subject with your wife as a couple is perhaps maybe plan a time when you can read it together. Read a bit of it together and then talk. Wow, this is an interesting description. So that might be something as well you guys can do. Now, a challenge to you wives. I've challenged the men already quite a bit. Wives, be a helper, not a fighter, right? Be a helper, which is the first proper description of the woman, of the wife in the Bible. When she's given a description apart from being a woman or a female, or we're told the thing that we're to think of the wife is as a helper. So be a helper, not a fighter. In my limited experience of being a pastor, often, if there's any challenge or rejection when moves are made for sex, very often it is the woman who is rejecting. Very often, not always, but that tends to be the case. Oh, I'm tired. I've got a headache. That kind of thing, right? Not today, or the kids, so I want to say, be a helper, not a fighter, right? Be a help to your husband, right? Respect your husband. It says on there, pray for him. Encourage him, give him good words, say so when he does, don't nag, respond physically, I would say, when he expresses that, admire him, and so on and so on. I think this is a very big thing. Be a helper, not a fighter. Don't be the obstacle attacking, be one who helps, even in this area. Charles Spurgeon, sorry, this is quite challenging. She is a wicked wife, Charles Spurgeon said, not me, who drives her husband away by her long tongue. God save us all from the wives who are angels in the streets, saints in the church, and devils at home. Don't be this kind of wife. I probably none of you are, but I just thought I'd say it. The other thing actually I've just remembered is that apart from how you speak and the pointy finger, I think the other ways in which wives can be very discouraging to husbands is in leave aside verbal communication, but the non-verbal, the look, right? Those things of, you give him a look of, you've come and you want supper, again, make it for yourself or whatever, it's like, where is this, do you know where my shirt is? And you look at him like, so you find it for yourself. Okay, the non-verbal communication can actually be where you can be a fighter, not a helper. You can discourage, not encourage. So I want to encourage you, wives, to that. And then older women, you have a role in this. If you're an older woman, and I'm going to leave you to define whether you fit in that bracket, you have a role in teaching the younger women how to be helpers, not fighters. And the Bible tells us this, Titus 2. Teach the older women, pastors are told to this, teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live, not to be slanderous or addicted to much wine, but to teach what is good. Then, having been taught that, what do? Then they can train the younger women to love their husbands. I think there is something about the older women. Younger women should be going to the older and saying, oh, I'm finding this a challenge at the minute. My husband has been doing this, or he's been saying this, or when he comes, how do I help? The elders should be helping the younger to say, in this moment, this is what you should do. Okay? And they should hopefully be telling them how they can be helpers, not fighters. Here's how you can love him. Here's how you can be gentle with him. Here's how you can be an encouragement to him. Here's something you can do that will really make him delighted. That kind of a thing. Okay, so you olders, you've been married for a while, 8, 9, 10 years. Consider this a role you can help. Those who've just got married, look for one lady perhaps you can mentor and spend time and say, how's it going? And not to gossip, not to kind of make comments, but just to find how you can encourage her to be more of a helper, not a fighter. I have more slides to go, but my time is up. So I think I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop presenting. I am well and truly over time. So is it James? James, I'm going to hand back to you, Uniambie, what we should do now, because I don't want to eat too much into the time.
All right. Thank you so much, Reverend Keith. We're grateful for the teaching and the wisdom, and there's a lot of things we've learned so far, and so time is gone, and we have a question and answer session, and there are so many questions, and probably some of those as you answer, you probably touch on the things that you probably not said, which I'm sure are very few. But I'll try. There are a couple of questions, and there are quite a number. What I'll try to do is categorize them so that you can answer them in chunks. Okay. But as I do that, if you have any questions, feel free to put them on the chat, or we have a question and answer tab on the activities. There's an activities button on the bottom right, and you can ask anonymously. So please feel free to do that. All right, so I will ask some few questions here. The first three, I think, are really questions on when sex becomes a duty. And I'll just ask all of them, and then you'll see how to answer them. So there's one that says, help, my husband spends every night on the couch and only comes to bed at 6 a.m. in the morning or whenever he wants sex. I don't understand this sleep pattern. Okay. There's another one that says, help, is it normal to feel like sex is a duty or a way to please my hubby? I no longer enjoy it, and my hubby wants them by looking after himself physically. And then the last one in that category is, please help, is it a must that sex is initiated by the husband? You probably answered a bit of that. I feel so bored that there is no or less effort even after expressing the concern. All right. To you, Reverend.
Thank you so much. Yeah, questions on duty. I really think one of the things that needs to be explored when the duty question comes up is what is the lead in to the moment that the couple has sex? What is going on around that? I think men struggle in this area because generally speaking, men get aroused, get excited very quickly. It can happen in, if you to use a car analogy, 0 to 100 in seconds, right? It's quite quick for men, I think. Whereas for ladies, that's not quite how it goes. Someone has said, I don't know whether I agree entirely, but I think there's insight into. Someone has said, for women, the emotions is what leads them to have sex. Whereas for men, it is the sex that leads them to have the emotions. It's usually for quite a lot of men, it's after that moment that they can express themselves and say, "Oh, I love you." They might say something tender. But for women, it's the emotions that leads to it. It's kind of they've bonded during the day. They felt there's been a connection. They felt that the person is interested. They felt that they understood them. And so I would say to men, especially the husbands, if your wife is in that phase of duty and she feels it, you want to be thinking, what has been leading us to the moment when we get there? And am I spending time really getting to know this person? Am I spending time getting to bond with this person? People say it starts early, it starts early on in the day. How did the day begin? When you got home, did you find a way to bond and connect with them? After supper, the kids are going to bed, are you a guy of just, okay, today I want it, let's go and do it? Or has there been some bond and connection that led to that? So think of it in that way. When a wife is feeling that duty thing, it's basically there's a sense in which she's feeling used. There's no understanding. There's no emotional connection that has been lost between you and the husband. And so you want, as a husband, to take the lead and work on that and say, I would really want to find a way in which we are bonding with this person. We have understood this person. One of my challenges I was going to give to the men is that we are not very good at communicating, at talking. Okay, but if you find a way to talk with your wife, and talk is not just how your house a day, or ilikosa, or good, but just find out what's going on. I normally say to husbands, can you tell me what you know the football scores and everything well, but can you name me three things that are most affecting your wife at this minute? And don't just leave it in the general. She's worried about finances. What exactly? She's worried about the kids. What exactly and why? She's worried about my health or whatever. What exactly is she worried about? Okay, that could be a route for bonding. The emotions, I think, in the main for women leads them to feel, oh, this has been a wonderful moment. Get to connect with her emotions, and then it'll limit that feeling of duty together. Yeah, so I would go down that route. You mentioned something about men letting go. I think that's a big challenge. Men work on that. Men should work on that. Their appearance, I would start there. It's going to be one of my points. How they look. I really think men should work at being. You go to church and ladies are generally smarter. They're more presentable throughout their lives. And men are just like, me, I've got a wife. Who cares? I can pull whatever. We need to. Actually, a wife sees you making an effort. She's like, wow, I like the way my husband looks. Let that be the vibe you give to her. Right.
Thank you so much. Maybe you can touch a bit, and I'm sure you've talked about it a bit in your presentation. There are a few cases there where husbands let go and, as described here, take care of themselves. What will you say about that?
Yeah, so I really think part of you communicating with your wife will be her expressing what pleases and what doesn't please them. And part of that then will be you hearing and being prepared to hear things that you might go, oh, like, I would love it if you did X. I would love it if you are. And also notice what delights her. The day that one time you say, hey, una capoa, you look nice. Notice that. Take note of that. Notice what it is that and do it. And so I would say issue of parents' health, weight, even for the guys. I think we really need to keep a tab on that. Ask them what how can so wives are meant to be a help, and I think from time to time husbands should ask, how can they be, husband, how am I being a help or not? The other way, go the other way, and husbands are meant to be those who love their wives like Christ and laying down. How do you feel like that is being expressed to you, my dear? Are you getting that vibe from how I'm doing? And when she says challenging things, including how you look, and she's concerned, usually it'll come, like for me, I went through a phase where, okay, I've never been had many issues, but I went through a phase where I was eating really bad food. And Rachel was like concerned about her health. You're like, Kip, I'm concerned about your health. And you have to listen to that and say, okay, I can see she's concerned about my health. I had to go and check my cholesterol was up. Like, okay, I better do something. So learn to listen to her as an expression of loving her like Christ loved the church, laying yourself down for them. How you look, how you dress, these things matter.
Thank you so much. All right, so I'll take a few more questions, and these ones are really, some of them are about frequency. I'll just ask them. Yep. So the first one is frequency of sex. Should you schedule or should you not? Another one that's close there says, my husband hasn't touched on, probably talking about they haven't had sex for the last 2 years since the conception of their child, and she specifically said not the birth, but conception. So how does she approach this matter? And the last one is how long? How long is too long for a couple to stay without having sex? Can it be questionable or lead to an unhealthy sex life?
Yeah, I think it can. Just on them as a general rule on the matter of frequency, I think it is not right. It is not right for any pastor, any elder to give it has to be this frequent. Okay, we don't want to end up in legalism. I don't think that would be a right answer. But I generally tell couples it should be frequent. It should be regular, and it should be frequent. Without necessarily telling you it has to be once a week or twice, whatever. I don't think that would be to veer off into legalism. Whereas this should be something that is driven by a real sense of love and commitment to each other and delight in each other. So I want to be careful of that. But 1 Corinthians 7 especially, it gives the impression it should be frequent, it should be regular. That you only cease, it says, for a time for prayer. And then given that it phrases that way, it means the other time it's happening. So I would now, I know this sounds like I'm contradicting what I just said, but if I got to meet that couple whoever wrote those questions, I would say actually, and certainly if the wife has asked for it, it sounds like it's a wife who's saying it. If the wife has asked for it and she has refused, I would say he is sinning. He's breaking 1 Corinthians chapter 7. Let me just get it so I have it here with me. I don't want to guess it. I would say he's treating his body like it is entirely his. Whereas 1 Corinthians 7 says that is not the right way to view it. Okay. The husband's body, the husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife's body does not belong to her alone, but also to her husband. In the same way, the husband's body does not belong to him alone, but also to the wife. Do not deprive each other. And what is happening in this case, if she wants it, and if she's mentioned it and he's denying it, he's depriving, I would say he is sinning. Okay. And if I'm the elder, a pastor of a church, and I got to know that of one of my members, I would actually be speaking to them and say, what reason is it that is limiting you to that? You shouldn't be depriving each other. The Bible expects it of you. And to come back to your point, I think it does lead to unhealthiness, because Paul implies that one of the reasons why it brings comfort and joy is to limit immorality. So I would be wondering what is going on with the man, what is going on with him. So I think it ought to be frequent. Without telling you exactly, it ought to be frequent. It ought to be regular. And if that is not happening, and the person, either husband and wife, was being asked and they're saying no, I would say they're sinning. They need to repent and do their marital duty.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, the next set of questions will really around trust, trusting one another. So the first one here is, how do you handle jealousy in marriage? Or my husband's female colleagues. I know for sure he's not cheating, but I can't help it when they call. All right, the other one is saying, I really love sex, but I'm losing interest because my husband has a BFF. As he calls her home, I think her husband calls the BFF and they spend all Saturdays with him and comes home in the morning. I feel neglected. I feel neglected, my duties as a wife, because I'm afraid of the outcome. And the last one is, what is the place of consent in marriage? I'm not sure it's talking about consent, sexual consent, but what is the place of consent? Yeah.
So let me answer all those using. Let me use the question of a husband or a wife, a husband having a female friend, not the wife, and the wife having a male friend, not the husband. I would, as a general rule, it was going to be one of my points to as we come to close, if I had gone the whole way through. As a general rule, I say that husbands should not have female friends who are not, or rather should not meet or interact with female friends who are not the wife, or when the wife is not present. And on the other side, wife should not have male friends meet up with them and spend time with them when the husband is not present. I just think that is a recipe for disaster. It's not a law thing; it's a wisdom thing. And a man is deceiving himself. This man is, if he's spending the whole day with a BFF, he's deceiving himself if he doesn't think there's any emotional input in that relationship. You're being unwise and lacking foresight. If you do not think there's any, why would you spend a whole Saturday and you're coming in the morning doing what exactly? When your commitment is to your wife, fundamentally, right? I would say even above the children, husband and wife are committed to each other first and foremost. That's where the relationship begins, and then these are the things that are an overflow. So I would really be cautioning and discouraging. The way I put it is, I would discourage any one-to-one interaction with a member of the opposite sex who is not your wife when your wife is not present, right? When your wife is not present. So I think that is just a very unwise thing. And then secondly, obviously, as husband, whenever you get to the bit of communicating, what a lot of the questions are telling me is that the couples have not communicated openly. Because when it gets to the point of communicating, I ought to be listening to what Rachel says and not just dismiss it. I am the leader of the house as a husband, yes, but that doesn't give me the right to just dismiss it. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. So husband, are you loving her as Christ loved the church when she expresses a concern about how it is causing her to be discomforted, it is causing her to be unhappy? Are you loving her as Christ loved the church when you dismiss that? I don't think you are. Interestingly, the Bible actually describes God himself as being jealous. He gets jealous. We're told that. Okay. For I, the Lord your God, it's mentioned at least twice in the Old Testament, in Exodus 20, 10 commandments. And if I remember correctly, Exodus later on, 34 there, God is jealous. So we fail to realize that jealousy is not a sin per se, especially when the involvement is someone whose devotion and commitment you require. You promise to share all that you are for life. When that is threatened, I think it is right for a spouse to go, hey, that time and that devotion should be mine. And she ought to speak, he ought to speak if it's the other way, and the whoever is being spoken to listen to it and remember that their commitment is to each other first and foremost.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so the next question is really about the art of sex. And this question asks, my husband ejaculates so fast. How do I approach him so as not to hurt his ego and also persuade him to go to hospital? Probably that's a question of communication, probably. And I'll combine it, allow me to combine with exploring, and there are a few questions about exploring sex, and they're saying, I'm trying new things in sex, Are sex toys welcome in a Christian marriage? And what is your view on oral sex?
Yeah, so I really think, as a general rule, and I should have said this at the beginning. So questions about like technique and kind of specifics. I don't know whether a pastor should always be the one who knows, but I know enough to know that in general, men. To use, I don't know this crude language, men get to climax, or as a general rule, before women. That's a general pattern. But I think part of the beauty of a married relationship, you already answered it, is communication and finding ways to address those issues without it becoming a thing where I am being undermined or disvalued. Think of that description in Genesis 2. I think beautiful picture of what it is to be married. The two of them were naked and they felt no shame. Okay, that is really what, that verse should be etched in every couple's bedroom. The two of them were naked and they felt no shame. Meaning, I can be vulnerable with Rachel. I can expose myself. Okay, and it's hard, I grant it. But there ought to be a place where it's like, yeah, she understands, and I've seen her, and I've known her, and I've heard of her, and I know what the weakness, the challenges are. Same with me, that way. So it ought to be a place. It ought to be a place where you are loved, and cared for and trusted, wonderfully. Tim Keller, who wrote the book The Meaning of Marriage, says, I think it's a great insight. He says, if you're loved and you're not known, you feel it is shallow. Okay, if I'm loved and I'm not known, if someone says to me, "Oh, I love you," or "You're my best friend," but they don't really know me, I feel it's not genuine, because I'm like, what can you do? If they really know that this is my weakness, if they know this is, then you always feel a bit insecure. You don't think, is this actually genuine? Then he says, let's run it the other way. He says, if I am known and I am not loved, that is our biggest fear. If someone truly knows what I'm like and they then don't love me, they say, what I've seen is horrible, I'm leaving. That is our biggest fear. That's why we pretend. That's why we cover up. That's why we laugh sometimes, when it's not even funny, we're like trying to cover up. So if I'm loved and I'm not known, we're insecure. If I'm known but I'm not loved, that is our biggest fear. We hate it. But he says, married should be about being known and being loved, which is what Christ has done for us in the gospel. He knows us in our brokenness, and he has loved us, and he still stayed with us. That is really what marriage should picture. I know you, I know your weaknesses, I know that this might be a challenge, but I love you still. Now, in the specific issue of the men getting to that exciting point faster, I think couples should talk about it. There are things that you can do, and again, this book actually has a whole section on that. I would, it's a whole chapter on it. I would recommend. It has 2 chapters, in fact, on that. 3 solution to common problems. Then the wife, when she wants to be, but she's not fulfilled, for the husband. So I would recommend. This is a book that is written by 2 doctors, 2 doctors and a pastor. It touches on some of these issues with specific things you can do to help. I would encourage, and it's written from a Christian viewpoint. I would encourage you to, if that is an issue and it's really causing you, talk about it before you go to doctors or whatever. Consider it and read about it.
All right. Thank you very much. The next one I'll go is issues to do with parenting and the season of parenting and the season of periods. And I have 4 questions here. One is, how is one supposed to overcome the fear of sex after giving birth? The other one is, my husband raised concerns about our sexual intimacy. Our son is 14 months old in our room because he's not yet sleeping through the night. Any tips to help? Some of that you mentioned. The next one is, after being married for several years with 3 children, how do you keep sex exciting and not just an event that happens if and when it happens? And the last one, that section, is, what about sex during periods?
So the first question was about, the first 2 are really about kids one day. when kids are around. So as I said, I really think that the pattern of having the kid in the room is not wise. It's not to be recommended. And the husband can help with these kind of things. So for me, let me give you an example. For us, when Rachel, when with our number 2 especially, who was a terrible sleeper, after a while, we came to the conclusion, after a while, you just have to put them in a different room. But when Rachel, here's where the husband can help. When Rachel is feeling like, oh no, I can't let them cry anymore, because there are times you just have to like say, no, they will get through it. Okay. Or it would be when they're crying, I would be the one who would go in and try and comfort them. Right. So because what happens, the wife goes, she tries, they don't stop, they bring them to the room. I'd be like, Rachel, let me go and deal with it. And it took a bit of time, but the husband should play the role of trying to encourage our wife. Look, he's crying. It's okay. Babies cry for a while. Let's train them to sleep. Let's work and see how. Or if they are crying and Rachel is feeling, oh, if I go, I'm sure I'm going to bring him, and they'd be like, I'll go instead. And I did that. For a while, I'll be the one to be like, if this number 2 child wakes up, not the others, wake me, I'm going to go. And I did. And after a while, okay, he began to set it. It wasn't immediate, but that's where they can play a part. Or deciding you're going to set a time limit. Like, my dear, let's work on a time. Okay, we this is like this time, but we need to get to work this by the next month. Let's work towards it. The other thing that people can help with, even this links to the question about, after pregnancy, how can I have sex again? This is where Titus 2 comes into effect. Like, you're not the first person to have had kids, Bwana, okay? Other people have, right? Talk to an older godly woman and ask her, what is it? So basically, this is the time when the older can come and say, like, can you help me? I am so fearful. And they will help you. They will help you and say, you know what? There is that fear. Others have had it, but here we are to give a testimony that this is not the end of. So I really think that is the kind of thing. The Titus 2 model really helps to, wives have issues there. There are things, to be honest, and I'm really glad, like Rachel has older sisters, and even she, without going in, she's told me, like she's asked her sister sometimes, what about this? Okay, that would be a good moment to go to someone older to say, hey, an older godly woman, and say, how do I deal with this issue? And then obviously if there are issues of image or changing body, then fundamentally the husband and wife should also talk and say, look, husband reassuring her, I love you as you are. I love, you've had my children and I know your body's changing, but I love you. You're mine. And what does Song of Solomon says, this is my beloved and my beloved is mine. Okay, that kind of thing. So that would be my general approach to with parents. I'm not actually sure. I think as a general rule, again, I don't want to be legalistic. I would say not. Let me give you my general rule. My general rule would be that would be a good time to set aside time to pray. Okay, that week should be a time to say, okay, this is a good time for me, husband, to be praying for her. Usually for many women, that's a time when emotions or moods or whatever, pray for her patience, Lord, help me to know how best to love her. If there are questions he's asked about, think of what you will discuss or something on your married life after this season. That's a good time to do that in that season. So I would, especially as I think more, it'll make, I reckon it probably will make her uncomfortable. So I think, I would do that. I don't want to make it a legalistic thing. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. I have another set of questions that really are around fanning the flame of sex. One says, how do we keep the flame alive when we're not spending time together? And he still wants us to have sex, yet we are emotionally distant. The other one says, help. Most church ladies after marriage don't take care of their husbands emotionally. More of them respect church matters than their husbands. That's why for help there.
So this goes back to a point actually I said earlier. I think it's really interesting. I was told this by someone. I don't know whether I agree with it fully, but it really makes sense that for women, it's the emotions that leads to sex, feeling that connection. we really bonded. We've spoken. He understands me. He listened. For men, it's usually that moment that leads them to think, "Wow, I have a beautiful wife. I have a love." Okay, as a general rule, I think there's some truth to that. So, if a wife is complaining of lack of that, it feels like there's no emotional connection, then I would ask the guy, what is he doing? How well is he? How much is he communicating with his wife? A general rule I give is here it is. Let me just see whether can I even share? Where is it? Let me just give a general rule I give to people is that we got to any questions and we got to this slide. Here's my general rule. I will skip all this. Is for the men especially, share some part of your day every day and read the Bible and pray every day. And listen, it doesn't have to be even 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be, I'm not saying don't then watch your TV or whatever you like to do in the evening, but find a way to share some part of your day every day, something, right? Usually, I don't know, most men might relate to that. Usually you get home, especially if you work outside home, you come back, your wife wants to talk to you. You know, she's, but usually guys are like, I just want a bit of quiet. I've had a stressful day, whatever. I want to just sit, maybe read the paper, find out what's going on in the news. Fine, but find a way where you can share some part of your day, something. You know, she'll ask, how was your day? Most guys will just say it was fine, but she wants more than that. Okay, and if you ask her, she'll tell you. And usually she'll share in a way that might not even have a point. She'll just say this happened, and you're waiting for what is a punchline. You try and find a way. Prepare maybe on your way home. Today I will talk about this. Share some part of your day. It doesn't have to be long, every day. And it's often overlooked, even amongst Christians, sadly. But read the Bible and pray every day. Simple. Again, don't make it those things that it has to be a mini sermon. I had of a couple who the wife is so unhappy about the devotions. The husband, he's not being encouraging. And then in talking to the man, you discover he wanted to be reading through sermons, like Spurgeon sermons, 25 minutes. Like, that's crazy, right? You don't have to be that. Just read something, read like 2 or 3 verses and say, honey, I was really struck by this today, or I've been reading this book and this verse was mentioned. Can I share that with you? Pray about your children, pray about an issue that she's going through work, a relationship issue with a friend that she's having, and that's it. Then you can watch a bit of TV, or you could, whatever. She wants to go and do a bit of the house chores, yeah, but share some part of your day every day, and you will be amazed at how much connection, emotional connection. That's what she's saying. She's saying, I feel like I am being used. I don't actually know who you are. I don't know what's going on, and I just feel I'm being used. That's what she's saying when she does that. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. I have one very important question in that category.
Yes.
It says, how should a man respond to the comment, not tonight, honey? All right, so how should a man respond to that?
Basically, what's going on there is if that comment is being given a lot, with a good amount of frequency, then you need to set aside time to find out what is going on, because that is it's basically a form of the 1 Corinthians 7, denying them. There might be something genuine going on, and for that night, there've been times, Rachel, there've been times with my wife, she'll say, I'm like I'd love to, but she was getting up early the next day, there's something going on, or something has happened, or whatever, then it's fine. Okay, I need to kind of try and find. But if that comment is being said like with regularity, you as a husband, again, take the lead and find out what exactly is going on. There's something behind that comment. And then just find out what exactly is going on. What is it that is making you say that? But every so often, let's be honest, every so often, we too will be able to say, hey, let's do it tomorrow, whatever. There'll be times where even us, I get home, I've had a really stressful day or whatever. Once in a while, I don't think it should be a pattern. Mindful of what 1 Corinthians 7 says. My body is not mine, hers, when you're married. But there are times when even there are times when I'm like, you know what, I remember, there are times when you want to avail yourself and you're like, look, I think Rachel wants to talk or wants this. But I remember once going through a tough season, honestly, and I said to her in the morning, what happened? I get to bed, the next thing you've just conked out. It's like morning. You're like, oh, I must have been. This is not. I don't even know what happened there. So I think that is to be understood. But if that comment is being said every night for a season, you need to say, honey, I think we need to talk just to find out. And okay, it might take a bit of probing, but you need to be able to just probe what is going on. How is there something that's been an issue? Have we not been talking? What's going on? So I think that would be where I would go with that. Something else behind the question.
All right. Thank you. I know we have a few minutes left, very few to the end of our session, but we have a set of our last questions, and I'll ask people to bear with us a few minutes. We answer this last question and then we'll conclude. This section is really about procreation, birth, and contraceptives. The first question there is comment about the sex being only for reproducing, not for pleasure. From scriptures, specifically that one has asked. Is having children a command from the Bible? Okay. And then the other one is comment about family planning, especially the withdrawal method. And the last one there is family planning using contraceptives godly. All right.
Right. So the first question was about the first two are really about children, and there's a big theme. There has been a big theme. I think it's actually even there in our own African culture, where the one flesh act the sex act is seen as a conduit, a way to get kids. Okay, when are you going to get married? Then you can have kids. That kind of a thing. I think that is an unbiblical view of what it is. I think that's a wrong view of what. So if you came to the seminar I did at the Rooted conference, there are 5 P's that marriage is about. Procreation is one of them, but not the only one. Pleasure is another one. And it's amazing. In Song of Songs, there's no mention of children, really. You've got a whole book. It's like, okay. So clearly that has got to be weighted. And the way the Roman Catholics got around this in the Middle Ages, in the 1200s, is to say Song of Songs is about Christ and the church. And it must have a connection to that, but it's not the only one, right? It's clear in the book. So that's how they got around it. But I don't think that is a right way to read the scriptures. We've got Proverbs and so on. We've got Ecclesiastes. Actually, Ecclesiastes chapter 9 has got a mention about delighting in your wife. So historically, we have had this view, because it is the way you get kids, fine, of just limiting it to that. I don't think that is right. I don't think that is biblical. Sex has more than just think about Jacob, Isaac, and Rebecca. Kids don't come until quite a while later. Even the time they're caressing each other and the king sees there were no kids on the horizon. He's comforted because of her presence. Later, they're really enjoying each other's presence. So we want to be very careful of limiting it to just kids. That is not a biblical way of viewing the world. I think that is the way Roman Catholics, that is the way the African culture has tended to think about it. But I don't think that is a healthy way to look at it. In terms of contraception, I would say that my views on this, I have to say, I think are changing. It's a question I don't know that I have a good answer right now, because my views are changing, I think. But my baseline, if people came to me, is to say that. I think I wouldn't. I want to be careful. I think in the main, I think I'm okay about it, contraception, so long as the method used does in no way destroy a fetus. That's a form of abortion in my mind. If you use, like, there are pills you can use which will basically dislodge the fetus, then I would think that would be wrong. You'd be treading a dangerous path. But things like condoms and so on, then I think, there is a place for them. My views are changing, it's a question I've been revisiting and reflecting on recently. In a culture, even though we think differently, in a culture increasingly, I would say, that is not very big on children, doesn't like children. is not very big on them, because we want to have a good life. We want to send our kids, I don't know, to where and live in this place and go to Naivasha every weekend. I'm encouraging couples more and more to think of ways they can have loads of kids. I think that is the biblical expectation. That is a biblical way of blessing. God considers it a way of delight and, showing the goodness of the Lord. So that would be my general approach to the matter. Right now, my views are changing. I've been happy with it as a general thing, so long as it doesn't involve the pill. There's forms of the pill that would actually dislodge and kill a fetus. I think that we're treading and hovering in the area of abortion. So I would be cautious of that. And withdrawal, yeah, you can just be aware, especially in the moment, man, success rate will be approaching success rate, meaning you don't conceive, will be on the lower side, because it's not. Yeah, we think we're as controlled as we are, but I'm afraid all these people who say, "Oh, we thought we'd manage and we're pregnant," yeah, that's what happens. So I would just say, try, but just be aware God might think otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sure you've tackled most of the questions. There are a few we haven't been able to tackle. But the next thing I'll ask you is if you're open to, taking some people who want to, some counseling with you, or can you recommend some programs or some books? I'm sure you've recommended one that people can read, or programs they can do, or, whether you're open, to receive people and talk to them.
Yeah, I am. I think this kind of forum would be very helpful. I probably is. I've not actually. One of the things that Rachel, as I've been talking with Rachel about this this discussion, one of the things I've been talking with Rachel is that we've not actually done this kind of level of thing for our couples here at Christ Church. I've talked a lot about marriage and sex and so on, as is fitting, and I'm able to, but I've not done much as I would like, and so I'm trying to find a way where even I can do it here first for the guys here. And if therefore where I can, because basically to do counseling, and even I challenged, when Fidel asked me to speak about this subject, I challenged him and I said, fine, okay, this is a subject that's close to my heart and I'm happy to talk about it, but this is something, and I think we get a sense of how many people have joined the call, this is something that local churches should be doing regularly. There's something that local churches should be doing regularly. And why I want to push it to local churches is it ought to be like some of those questions. If someone was telling me, if I knew that one of the couples at church, the guy was not coming to bed until 6 a.m, I would prioritize meeting up with them as soon as possible. I would be like, that, husband, you're not loving your wife. If I knew that someone they'd not had sex since conception and it's been over 2 years, man, areas for temptation, for pornography, for sexual immorality, for lusting, they must be huge. So I would want to meet with that person immediately, and that kind of thing is done best in the local church context. It really then elders, pastors can keep a track and say, hey, without being judgmental in the wrong sense, I hear you are struggling with, you shared last time, how is that going? So I would love, I would probably be able to do another thing like this. I mean, how many slides did I not do? I got to slide number 74 and I had another 32. But I would really, I'm happy to do probably another group thing. But the counseling thing, the problem is, it's in a sustained level. So I would encourage the churches you come from, and I'm happy maybe to come to the church and talk about it the way I've done here. But elders, pastors ought to run with this and say, you know what, it's a big issue in the Bible. Christians ought to be and especially couples ought to be reflecting on it. I'd encourage that.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Reverend Kip. I'm so grateful for the sessions. I'm sure many of us are, as I can see the thumbs up there and the claps. We're very grateful. Thank you all for joining us today. We are very grateful to have you and to show up. Again, I have shared the books that have been mentioned here. I have not mentioned, my name is James Joroge. I come from Grace Point Church, part of the family committee that has organized this, and for sure we'll probably have another discussion like this in the future, maybe a Sex Talk 2.0. Also, one thing before we go, please, we'll be sending a feedback form after meeting to your emails. Please, if you see it, please, it will be very helpful for us in organizing this again. Again, thank you so much. I'd like to welcome Reverend Harrison to conclude for us. Thank you for bearing with us for the few minutes that we've gone overboard, but I'm sure you have benefited from it. Great. So, karibu sana, Reverend Harrison.
Indeed, thank you very much, James and the team at Families Subcommittee for putting on this evening. And a very, very special thank you to Reverend Kip for being a wonderful facilitator and very confidently speaking about this very interesting subject. Thank you all for coming. Let's commit our hearts to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for creating us. And we thank you that we see this subject throughout the scriptures. We thank you that it is ordained of you. We thank you that it is a good and godly thing. And we want to delight in it more and more. Thank you for the benefits that we've been hearing about. And we thank you that, Lord, you have indeed gifted all these married men and women this wonderful gift of intimacy. Please, Lord, help us to use it to the glory of your name, but also to the joy and the enjoyment of one another. And help us, Lord, not to idolize it. And help us to listen to your voice as we have been pointed back to your word over and over again, wherever it keep this evening. And Lord, help us to indeed, very intentionally, not listen to unhelpful voices that are out there in the culture that are teaching and that are trying to conform us into their own mold that oftentimes is sinful. And so, Lord, we thank you for all these marriages. Please grant that there would be thriving, that there would be flourishing, that there would be joy and delight. Please grant that amidst the counsel of your word, these families, these marriages would thrive. And so we honor you and we praise your name for tonight and commit the rest of the night for us before you and trust that, Lord, you would indeed watch over us and bless our companionships one with another. For we ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Amen. Thank you so much.
Amen.
Amen.
Great. Thank you very much. You're free to leave as you wish. Put a song to usher us out. So thank you very much.
What if I couldn't eat? What if I couldn't move? Would you still love me? What if my body ached and I always made you late? What if I couldn't wait? Would you still love me? Would you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? Would you still love me? What if I'm complicated, always leaving you frustrated? Nothing ever went quite right. Would would you still love me? Wish I could let you know what the future holds. It's a promise I can't make. Through the good and bad, happy and sad, love's the risk that we must take. Would you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? Ooh, would you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? Oh, would you still love me?
If I could speak again, I'd ask you to remember when we first met and fell in love. We were so young and dumb, but our love was so strong. Memories of those late nights, so I feel this fight.
If I could speak again, I'd ask you to remember when we first met and fell in love. We were so young and dumb, but our love was so strong. Memories of those late nights, I would feel this fire. Would you love me when it's hard and our lives falling apart? If the things that we once knew are long gone, if our blue skies turn to gray and my memory fades away, would you still love me? Would you still love me? Would you still love me? Would you still love me?